Guys, in just a second, I'm going to be introducing author Sarah Miller, and her most recent book is called Caroline, and it's about the mom from Little House on the Prairie. It's told from her point of view from the time they left Wisconsin until they arrived down in the Kansas territory. And I loved this book. I loved hearing this perspective, and for all you Little House on the Prairie fans, you are going to love it too. So here is Sarah. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking with author Sarah Miller, and her newest book is called Caroline. And for all you Little House on the Prairie fans, there she is. I love that cover. It's just perfect. And I was so excited when you said yes, Sarah, because I wanted to read this book and I wanted to talk to you about it. And I have to say, I'm 53. I'm older than you. And I kind of missed the Little House shows. I saw a little bit of them, but the beginning I was kind of young, and then I got kind of old, and I was like, I don't know, it was a very weird era for me, but I did read the books with my daughters. So I wanted to hear from you. Like, how did you come up with that? How did you realize that that's what you wanted to do? Were you just a huge fan?
No, that's the funny thing. I was too wimpy for the TV series, in part because I always had the dumb luck to catch the really, really heavy episodes. Like, I mean, it was like Lassie, Timmy was always falling down the well. Same with Little House. Like, it was never the big spelling bee. It was the baby died. Right. It was, there's a rapist in a clown mask on the loose in Walnut Grove. You ever see that episode? People don't believe that's an episode. It's a thing. So I was too big of a wimp for that. I had the books as a kid. They were under the Christmas tree one year. The paperback box set, the yellow one, which apparently when I was in De Smet, South Dakota, they had a chronology on the wall. You can actually date yourself by what format of the books you had. There was a blue set, there was a yellow set. I had exactly the set I was supposed to, the yellow one. It never really, really caught with me. I mean, I liked them. My friends and I played Mary and Laura, and because kids are fascinated by what kids are fascinated with, we fought over who got to be the blind one, because that was the interesting thing to us. I know. And then, I was kind of over it until I worked at a children's bookstore when HarperCollins was issuing the audiobooks. And the owner took one home, and she's like, "This is great. You guys have to try this." So I took one home and I tried it, and the next one and the next one and the next one. And two things I attribute to what really caught me there. One is that they're performed by Cherry Jones, who's, a Broadway actress, and she does what a good actor does. She gives you more than what is on the page with her voice. And also, if you're a grown-up, you're paying attention to different things. When you're a kid, it's all, let's all jump in the wagon and Jack's going to trot underneath it and it's going to be a big adventure. And when you're a grown up and you realize that the people in the front of the wagon are your people, that's your age, you go, wow, that's a whole different trip than sitting in the back with your rag doll and, and the fiddle box. It's totally different thing.
You know what? It's funny that you say that, because I was just saying that this morning to my boyfriend, because I was talking about this interview, and I said, you know what? I do remember reading these younger, not crazy reading, but reading them. And now as my age, when I was reading your book, I'm like, oh my God, what was she thinking? Why would she do this?
What was he thinking? Yeah.
What was she? I mean, here she is pregnant. Okay.
That was the other thing that I went kaboom.
Right.
That changes everything.
It changes. I mean, you take that trip not pregnant and you're crazy. You take that trip pregnant and you have gone to another level of crazy. And when she taught, when you're writing the book and you're talking about it from her point of view and the things that she did physically. Okay. Yeah. I was like, I don't even know how she did that. I mean,
everything is physical. I can't do the laundry without thinking of Mrs. Ingalls. Because it used to take all day, and now I'm like, I tote my basket down, I dump it in, I put in, it's like 2 minutes. Now, granted, it takes me 3 days and 10 minutes to fold the laundry, but that's because, that's all me. That's not about the equipment.
Oh my gosh, when you wrote, and I always like to say I don't want to do spoilers, but there's not really spoilers because it's just from her perspective. We kind of know what happens in a weird way. I mean, we know how it ends, but it is kind of from her perspective. So, but as I was reading that storm with the mud.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, now, never mind. Like, you already thought about the ice and the snow, but then think about mud. And I'm like, oh my God, how long did it take to get mud out of that place?
Out of everything. Well, and, in the original book, it takes, in Little House on the Prairie, it takes them, I used to know the figures precisely, under 30 pages to get from Wisconsin to Kansas. It's a children's book. I mean, it has to.
Right, it has to, right.
I took more than 100 because it's not a children's book and it has to.
Yes.
It's not just, well, we traveled for a while. It's not just, it's not like driving to Florida to go to Disney World. You don't go down I-75. It's different.
Yeah. And I went back and I ordered on Amazon the first episode because, like I said, it was 1974. I was in fourth grade. My parents were probably like, no. We had one TV set. Can I watch Little House on the Prairie? No. That was probably the end of that conversation. So I went back and watched it just because I wanted to see how they did it.
Was that the pilot episode?
The pilot episode,
yeah,
yes.
That's pretty faithful to the book.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty faithful. And, it gave me a good basis of like thinking about her. I thought they did her really well. And I could kind of get into your book and her head in that manner. But the parts that I struggle with Caroline is like, she is such a kind woman. Like, when she thinks about, okay, I'm not going to speak to I'm going to wait. How did you, like, how were you coming? I mean,
because when you read Ma in the original book, she's a little bit in some ways difficult to like because she is so perfect and she's so virtuous. She's very pious. These are all very good things. But when it's constant, it's like, you're not even allowed to be disappointed when Christmas is spoiled, because you're supposed to be thankful that you have the roof and the good turkey, but none of the other things you were looking forward to have happened. As a kid, you're like, Ma. But when you learn about the real Mrs. Ingalls and the poverty that she knew as a child, you go, oh, okay. I understand why you say these things. It's not flippant. It's not just lip service. She knew what it was like to be hungry and cold and all of that.
Right. And to have the patience. I mean, what I'm picturing is like, so you're out there, you're thinking maybe he didn't think this out as well as he should have. Maybe. And does he really know where we are? Like, those would be basic questions.
Yeah. I mean, because I remember, you remember what it was like to navigate with paper and not with a screen.
Yes.
But I mean, when I looked at the maps that we time, I found one that I was just like, wow, you really don't know. It's just a whole different venture,
right? Where
you're going. It's this far from one place, and then this. Yeah,
mind blowing. Okay, and and to think that because I read into Wikipedia because I really wanted to know the story, behind what happened with them, and to think that they got down there. I mean, I don't know how many people know this. Maybe I'm the only one who didn't know this, but they get down there, and then 2 years later they have to go back. Okay. And then like their story is that her patience was mandatory almost because I'm telling, any other woman would be like, wait a second. Okay. We just went all the way down here.
But how many options did she have? I mean, really, that was just, it is in part how it was. And we're so used to, because as kids and even watching the TV show, you're so used to seeing Charles and Caroline Ingalls as so competent. They make everything cozy and safe. But they were 30-some-year-old people. They were just people. And, when your car breaks down by the side of the road, unless you're a mechanic, you do panic for a little while, And so I had to think from time to time, these are just people my age who are trying to do something they've never done before. They don't know. I would get in kind of a dither, I'd be kind of like in the wagon on the way somewhere. And like, oh, I'm not Ma. It's not 1870. I don't know. How did they do this? He doesn't know either. So stand in the wagon. You've packed it yourself. Look at what you have and look at what you can do and just do it. Because sometimes that's what they had to do. Of course, there were things they knew how to do better than we do, because we didn't have to do those kinds of things,
Right.
the manual stuff and all of that. But there had to be times when they were just flying by the seat of their pants. And maybe that was invisible to the children, because your parents are always like, they've got it together, man. They know how to do the things.
Right. Right. Yeah. And,
But really,
it also takes faith to a whole new level too. When I think about the thing, gratefulness and because, she was so grateful, and you could see that she struggled with gratefulness. Like, she'd get in her head, you would get in her head about like, there's this, and then it's like, okay, well, I have this, and she'd and her prayer and her calmness, because I just think I'd be freaking out a lot, but she was very calm and very, and
probably she has to. I mean, that's her job.
Right.
What we know of her, we know that.
And I was going to ask you that, like, do you think in that time period, like, there was such defined roles, like that was her job? Okay, she was the, like she had to back him no matter, not question him so much.
Because the labor was so intensive. It's like I said, the laundry takes all day. Somebody has to spend the whole day doing that while somebody else is out in the field or hunting or whatever. Somebody has to make the clothes. They have to make the food. The labor of survival takes up so much of your time that you have to divide the duties. Now, why we as a society have chosen to divide it so strictly,
right,
and so uniformly for so many decades, that's a whole nother question.
Right.
But, and in that family, I wish I could remember, I need to look it up so I sound smarter and give proper credit when I say this. Some scholar pointed out that in that family, and that in the original books, there's equal weight given to men's and women's work. Charles Ingalls always thanks Caroline Ingalls for supper and for I said it in my book because it's accurate. They do. They appreciate what each other, their different work, and they know that both of those things are completely necessary. Right. For the whole family to get along.
Well, what I learned from it too is like, if you're just kind to each other, no matter what you're going through, like they really paid attention to being kind in even bad circumstances. Like, there, and I don't know what they did, if they did that in the TV show. It seemed like the ones that I saw, they absolutely kept that, like you watch your tone. You watch, how she would say, is there vinegar in my, in my tone, and it's like, was there, it's like, if you, but think about that. If we just did that all the time. And
for women, that was very much an expectation of the time. It's in the household handbooks and, how to be a good wife and how to be a good mother. That is a thing that is very much expected of you.
Right.
So to what degree was it her temperament naturally? I think there was, some level of that. And how much was sort of, taught and learned as a child, that we'll never know, because it in a large part of that is just how things were at the time. But her temperament was very patient, as far as we know from what survives from Laura Ingalls Wilder, and how much it's difficult to know how much of Ma in Little House in the books is Mrs. Ingalls, as I call her to specify the living person, and how much is Laura's Ma, the character. Of course, they're very, very similar. You can't imagine it any other way, but I would imagine there are also some differences.
Right. Well, what I loved the most, and I want to hear what you loved about it, but I loved when I was doing the research to find out how old she was when she wrote these books. Because like I said, I'm 53, and for some reason you start thinking there's a time in your life and you've kind of done it, and you've kind of, I've done this and I've done that. But she was older when she started writing these books, and older yet when they became popular and she actually saw success with them. And so it was a big, huge inspiration for me, because that was back in the 30s. And I don't know, like to think that, okay, that's what I'm going to start to do now. I'm just going to sit down and start writing.
Although she had been writing for the newspaper, the Missouri Ruralist, from like the 1910s. It was a different type of writing. It was a different style, but she had been working at it and sort of, getting her sea legs for a couple of decades.
Right. And then to be like, I'm going to write about my childhood. And You know, I thought that
But
was
it's different to be a competent newspaper columnist and then to write a fictionalized memoir of your own life for children.
right.
That's totally different.
Yeah.
It requires the same basic tools, but it's a different approach.
Yeah, and I went and looked at some pictures of her as she got older at some book signings. They had pictures of her, and I was like, oh, the look. She looks so beautiful, and like the piece on her face and everything. I was just like, oh,
She's
look
so
at her.
little.
I know. I was like, she's so beautiful. It was so cute. But did you, in your research when you were writing this, what was the like? Did you find anything that kind of just blew you away about this, about Caroline, or about her, or?
The thing that you sort of slowly realize, I mean, some of it comes from family correspondence, the poverty really that was throughout Laura Ingalls Wilder's life, and in Caroline's life also. But especially if you suddenly read Farmer Boy after reading the whole Little House series and all the food those people eat in one meal. And then you look at the Ingalls and you go, they weren't eating salt pork and cornbread because it was delicious every day.
Right.
It's delicious the first couple days, and then you get over it. They were eating that because that's what they could afford.
Right.
So when you read about Alonzo Wilder as a child, just stuffing himself with chicken and pork and pies and it felt like 8 kinds of vegetables and 32 kinds of jelly and all at one meal, and donuts and cookies, and you go, oh, Laura Ingalls Wilder somehow makes us sort of unaware of how difficult it really was for her family.
Right.
And the family correspondence that I was talking about was in 1925. Caroline Ingalls died in 1924. And like so many people, Laura Ingalls Wilder regretted that she had never gotten the family stories from her mother, who apparently was somewhat reluctant to talk about her own childhood.
Okay.
And so Laura wrote to her mother's sister, Aunt Martha, in 1925. And there's, I don't know, a dozen or 24 letters between the two of them where Aunt Martha does talk some about what it was like growing up and what she remembered and trading recipes and all this kind of stuff. And you realize that poverty went way back. Caroline's father died when she was 5-ish, and her mother had, 5 children and 1 on the way when her husband drowned. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of hits you harder than you expect. You think all about the Ingalls.
Right.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really happy that you kind of brought them to life for me. It was like something to experience. I've spent the last, week just kind of watching different things, and it was fun. I'm really happy that you did that and bring it back, because there's always a generation that's going to be reading these books. Okay. It's like the next, like I said, I read some of them I remember reading Plum Valley with my daughters. And,
On the Banks of Plum Creek is really super.
Yeah. And,
but there's a grasshopper plague in there. Like, they lose everything in that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still, why is it comfort food for us?
I don't know.
But it is. I mean, that's what's amazing about Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Yeah.
Is she takes these really not even terrible things, and you just, cozy up with them, and you love them, and they make you feel good.
Right.
How does she do that?
How does she do that? I know. But it just kind of...
There's a new biography just this last fall by Caroline Fraser called Prairie Friars. It's giant. It's like 500 or 600 pages.
Wow.
She gives so much more context about, what was happening in the world around them and why these circumstances. You start to, I think, feel a little more sympathetic toward Pa.
Yeah.
Because I think one thing that people find with my book is that, Pa was so much fun.
Yeah.
In Little House. And then when you think about actually being married to him, you're like, oh, well, that's not always fun.
That's what I'm saying. I was looking at it like that too.
And all of that they were existing, at that time, you got to cut him with some breaks at least.
Yeah. I know. That's how I was looking at him in your book because of my age. He's fun when you're little and reading it. And you're like, oh, what a great dad. As a
He's
husband.
Got eyes, and he plays the fiddle, and he calls it half. He tells stories and plays Mad Dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ma says, moderate your voice, Laura.
Moderate your voice. But I think that she actually loved Laura's spirit. You know, Mary was kind of more like her. I thought I felt like, that's just from the little bit that I've done. It felt like, and then she kind of saw that Laura had a little bit more his spirit, and she liked it, but she also felt like she had to keep reining her in a little bit.
Because of, what's expected of women at the time. I mean, we can see that as constraining because the society is, but what her mother is doing is trying to, in her mind at least, make it so that her daughter has an easier time getting along in the world. I mean, she doesn't want to crush her and break her, but she knows what society expects of women and wants her to be able to function.
Right. Well, I love your books. I was going through your books. Let's talk about you. Because I see now like how this came to you. You like taking a story from different angles. And I love that. Well, I'm a reader and I love looking at a story from, any other point of view you can take a story. I'm just all about it. And, we already talked about The Lost Crown, which I can't wait to read and talk to you about because that's really important this year. But Miss Spitfire, I mean, there we are, totally different look at Helen Keller's life through Annie's eyes, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, and that was in 2007. But then lately, it's like your books have been coming faster, it seems like. Are you trying to get them? Are you trying to do that? Are you trying to get them out faster? I mean,
that would be ideal, but I'm terrible at being fast. So.
Oh, you are? Well, the Borden murders were in 16, and then this one was in 17. Do we have a book?
Then the Borden murders happened because Caroline took me like 6 years, and I deliberately took about 6 months off. And did the writing of the Borden stuff. I was reading it because I thought it was interesting. And then I figured out you can do something with, you can make something of this. So I took the time away to write that, which is why they sort of came kaboom, kaboom.
Right. How they came.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to sustain that pace.
I was going to say, are we looking at another book in 2018?
Not till 19.
Not till 19. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, the new one will be about the Dion quintuplets. Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
You're under 70, so you don't have to hear. You don't have to know.
But I do think that but it sounds familiar. So tell me about them.
They were born in 1934. They were 5 baby girls.
Yes.
Born 200 miles north of Toronto. They were the first set of quintuplets ever to survive. They were born 2 months-ish premature. The 5 of them together weighed under 14 pounds.
Wow.
And yeah, they shouldn't have lived. Just for all kinds of reasons. They were tiny, they were fragile, they were preemies, that it was hard for them to breathe. And at that time, the record for survival of any quintuplet, any member of a set, was 50 days. One quintuplet in Portugal in the 1860s survived for 50 days. And this whole set lived. And the world went berserk because it was unheard of.
It's like a freak, probably. Like, oh my God, these, multiple babies can live outside of triplets, pretty much.
You would have to have like 12 babies now to have the sort of frenzy that the Dions caused in their day. Then, where it gets really crazy is that their father, there were 5 living children in that family on May 27, 1934. May 28, 1934, suddenly there's 10 children, and 5 of them are very, very fragile. And it's the Depression. He's a farmer. He's hauling gravel for the government for $4 a day when he can get the work. And he's terrified. How's he going to support his family? So when the Chicago World's Fair calls and asks him to bring his children to the fair, without that context, you go, buddy. With it, you kind of understand. So he agreed, and then he reneged. But that kind of made people a little nervous, I think. So when he tried to renege, but Chicago said, oh, no, you don't. So in July, when Chicago, the promoter came up and said, let's work this out. You're bound to this contract. The solution that the government proposed was to Mr. Dion, sign your children over to the Red Cross for 2 years. Because Chicago can't touch the Red Cross. You're bound to this contract, but they are not. And we will build you a hospital for your 5 children across the road from your house, and we will take care of them for 2 years. So Mr. and Mrs. Dion
Wow.
did that, which, that blew your mind. Then the Dion's, because in 2 years they need more money, these babies are going to come home, they need to expand their house and all of this. They said their reason then to go on a vaudeville tour in February of 1935 of Chicago, Detroit, South Bend. And the government of Ontario, just red flags went all over the place. They thought those babies were going to be exploited. They were going to be sent to Ripley's Believe It or Not. They were going to be on the American stage. It was going to be a disaster. And so they took custody of the children. They made them wards of the crown until they were 18 years old. They passed a bill through the legislature in March of 1935 to seize control of the Dion's children.
Wow.
To save them from being exploited. Now, wait. One more.
Okay.
Then in 1936, because the public is so enamored of these adorable little babies and demands to see them, they built what I'm being a jerk, I call a baby zoo. They built a horseshoe-shaped observatory around a playground and let the public twice a day come in and view the children.
Wow.
For free, because they didn't want to exploit them. I say with my tongue stuffed into my cheek.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a very cool book.
Yeah. And 2 of them are still living.
Wow.
They're 83. They'll be 84 this year.
That's awesome. How did you find that story?
Well, there's 2 answers to that. The first one is that for some reason, out of the blue, it dawned on me a couple of years ago that I had a little bitty set of Tyco Quint dolls. Had nothing to do with the Dion's. They were just little plastic babies. I had a couple sets of them as a kid, and I thought, I don't know what, thought, I wonder if those are worth anything. I wonder if I have those still. Are they in the attic? I wonder. So I went to eBay and Etsy. And if you go on eBay and Etsy and you type in quintuplet dolls or quint dolls, you will find the Dion's before you will find the little Tycos,
Yeah.
The other part of the answer is that, because they weren't unfamiliar to me when I found, Dion quintuplet dolls online, I wasn't like, gee whiz, what are those? I went, oh yeah. Because my grandma loved everything you were supposed to love in the 1930s. Judy Garland, Betty Davis,
Right.
Deanna Durbin, and the Dion quintuplets. And I think that's where I first heard about them.
Well, that is so cool. I can't wait to see that book. That'll be that. It's fascinating because people really don't know that story now.
No, they don't. I mean, if you're American, and like I said, if you're under 75,
you don't
remember the 1930s, there's not much reason for you to be aware of the Dion's in this country.
Right. Well, I love when authors like you bring those stories to today, that we can read about them. So anyway. Yeah. Okay, show everybody the cover again. I want them to see it because it is so beautiful. And I love, did you decide to turn her face away towards, did you decide that? No. Your publisher?
No, just other smart people did smart things and made it.
I love that. I love that they did that. Well, I can't wait to talk to you again.
Cover when I see it. I don't know how to make one,
Right. Right. And everybody loves covers. So I'm glad it was so beautiful. But I can't wait to talk to you about the Lost Crown. And that'll be so much fun, especially, I'm telling you, Robinoff people right now, they're all coming out because big celebrations. Yeah.
It's a big year.
It's a big year for them. So anyway, thank you so much, Sarah. And we will be talking soon. I will have all of Sarah's links underneath here so you can find her, and you can find Caroline on Amazon and Goodreads, I'm sure, everywhere. And but all the links will be under here. Bye, Sarah. That interview was so much fun. I can't wait to talk to Sarah again, and I will have all of her links listed underneath here. I hope you get Caroline. I mean, you saw how much fun Sarah was, and we're going to be talking again, and I can't wait. Thanks for watching. Hit like if you liked watching this. Hit subscribe if you want to watch all my videos, and thank you.